Did Treylon Burks hurt himself at the NFL Combine? And which quarterback stock is rising way up the board? All that and more on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, everybody. I'm Kate Magdziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallBlast. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Be sure to give the show a follow at Locked On Dynasty and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us those 5-star reviews. Let us help you build the ultimate Dynasty team. This is primetime Dynasty season, baby, and we are here for it. Marcus, happy Combine week. We are in the full swing of things.
I've been muted. Watching 8 hours of coverage yesterday. I was, just really grinding the numbers, posting as many numbers as possible, and I felt the most unathletic of my life yesterday, just watching these guys run. So,
kind of ironic.
I know. We should talk about some of the combine results from Thursday. Not everybody is a 4.2 speed. Don't worry. That's the NFL combine numbers were a little off. However, there were some guys that tested really, really well. I think we should start with Garrett Wilson, right? Garrett Wilson is one of the top receiver prospects in this year's class. Most people were thinking he'd run 4.5, maybe in the high 4.4s, and instead he runs a 4.38 40-yard dash, performs really well in all of the drills. Does he move up at all in your rankings?
Garrett Wilson was already pretty high for me in my rankings, but you got to love that 4.37 40. I mean, just didn't do anything to hurt his stock. That's definitely for sure. But I think maybe the biggest bar to Garrett Wilson moving up further up NFL draft boards, could it be teammate Chris Olave, who we very briefly thought tied for the third fastest 40-yard dash time. Rest in peace to that that unofficial time.
So his official time was 4.39. That's still a ridiculously good time. It's phenomenal.
It's a fantastic time, but when you think you have the third fastest in history,
I know.
I mentioned this. Obviously, the unofficial 40-yard dash times that we got initially were a little off. Chris Olave was under the assumption that he was in the 4.2s. We're in the third fastest 40-yard dash of all time. So why run again? He missed that opportunity to take a second run, which I think is super unfortunate because who knows? Maybe we would have seen even faster 40-yard dash.
Fair point. I didn't even think about that until you brought it up pre-show. There was a couple of different receivers. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think his unofficial time was a 4.28 or something like that. And once it got adjusted, it became a 4.44. Didn't run again. So maybe that did impact it some. A couple more guys just to mention. Christian Watson from North Dakota State. You want to talk about somebody that had a heck of a combine. Actually, had a whole pre-draft process. He comes in 6'4", 208 pounds, 10-inch hands, runs a 4.36 40-yard dash, a 38.5 vertical jump, and a 136 broad jump. Kate, I know a lot of people last night on Twitter were thinking, maybe he's a day 2 pick before the combine, and now, is he a sleeper to be like a first round pick in the actual NFL draft?
I wouldn't be surprised at this point, and I think this is sort of one of those situations where you have the hype train rolling very quickly. We are not, the only ones who aren't immune to that hype. It's really hard for these NFL teams not to fall in love with a big-bodied wide receiver that's able to do athletic things that other folks can't. I definitely think he has made his way up the board. But my question for you, Marcus, we have so many guys that I think are potential first-round picks. How many wide receivers might we see go in the first round of the draft? Because I feel like, it's not a heavy quarterback class. Could we see a lot of wide receivers go in the first round?
I thought about this a lot yesterday. It's a really good question. I think the number is 6. I wouldn't be surprised if not a single one goes in the top 10, but we have 6 total in the first round because there's just some really good prospects. Even somebody like Jahan Dotson yesterday, who tested pretty well. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash. You've got Dotson. You got the 2 Ohio State receivers in Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Jameson Williams at Alabama. He's hurt right now, but he might be the fastest receiver in the class. You've got Drake London. And then there's Treylon Burks, who, Kate, I want to talk to you about this one because I think most people think he had a below average combine because there was talk of him running in the 4.3s. He runs a 4.55 official 40-yard dash.
I would like to remind everybody, Treylon Burks is 6'2" and 225 pounds.
Yes.
Let's talk about that because I am not here for the Treylon Burks. I actually just came out on Twitter to unofficially announce that Drake London is my wide receiver 1, but Treylon Burks, we know he's like right there edging him out here. Why are we forgetting about the size and physicality that Treylon Burks is bringing to this and what impact that has on speed and mobility? Because we see on the field, it doesn't impact his ability to play.
Yeah, and that's the point that I was going to make is I think the expectations were so high that now that he only quote unquote only tested as like an 80 percentile athlete, we're disappointed. And we shouldn't be because he was still really productive. He's still really productive in college. He's still going to be bigger and faster than a lot of the guys that he's going to go against. I just think we were hoping he was going to have a Calvin Johnson-like workout. And instead, it's more of an A.J. Brown type of workout, which is fine because A.J. Brown is still a top 5 dynasty receiver. Like, I'm not projecting Burks to be that, but he certainly has enough athleticism to be picked wherever you think he was going to be picked before that.
Yeah, this should have absolutely no bearing on anything, really. I mean, I think you probably should have expected this to be within the range of outcomes for Treylon Burks, just given his size. And I don't know what we are asking of this kid. Just hop off, guys. And if your league mates really want to downgrade Treylon Burks this heavily because of a combine and
I agree.
Still testing well, then this is your time to buy.
I agree. If you liked him a lot pre-combine, fantastic time to buy, as you mentioned. Any other receivers that you want to mention before we move on to quarterbacks and tight ends? There was a lot of guys yesterday, Kate, that just had really good performances, and I know we can't mention them all, but any last one you want to mention?
I am definitely disappointed here in my guy Drake London. He had really no reason to work out coming off the broken ankle. He's there for medicals and basically to prove that he is still hanging in there. But super bummed that we did not get to see him. Calvin Austin out of Memphis, I think.
Yeah.
We need to mention just absolutely blazing 4.32 40 official, just absolutely dominated. 20-yard shuttle was 4.07 time, nearly a 40-inch vertical jump, 11 foot, 3 foot.
I got the percentiles
11 foot,
here.
3 inches. Yeah, please give me the percentiles because the numbers are bananas. The raw numbers are bananas.
96 percentile 40-yard dash, 4.32, 87 percentile vertical jump, 98th percentile broad jump, 87th percentile short cone.
Absolute freak. And this is, I joked as we saw Calvin Austin up there. This is the kind of guy that the Raiders are just going to trade up to number 1 overall to draft because they are going to fall for this guy so hard with all of those metrics. We know they like them some speed and some, overdrafting of prospects. I could totally see the perfect marriage now.
I just want to mention one more. I really like the day that George Pickens had. I know he ran a 4.40 unofficially. That ended up becoming a 4.47 officially. Still a really, really good time for him, right? I was honestly expecting a 4.55, 4.52. Running a 4.47 is great. And then having a 125 broad jump with 78th percentile. He also measured in at 6'3.5" with
That's
32
what
and
I
a
was
half
going to
inch
talk
arms.
about.
Now the
That's the nice part.
hands are small, 8 3/4. Him and Kenny Pickett together would have a normal size hand. But like that fantastic. Just checking boxes. And the fact that he is less than a year recovered from the ACL injury. He had the ACL injury in May and he ran a 4.47 at that height and that weight. Sign me up, Kate. Like he crushed it.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic job. And I don't think that any of us, um, I think like all of these metrics, though we can write them in and formalize them with numbers. Um, you know, George Pickens, small hands, but
That's all right.
again,
Doesn't play that way.
but that's what I'm saying. When we look at the official numbers, it's always important to circle back and say, have I seen this be a problem on the field? And maybe we'll use that as our teaser for the next segment. Let's talk about Kenny Pickett next because I want to talk
Yes.
about these tiny hands.
Yes, let's talk about Kenny Pickett. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Bet Online, where you can actually gamble on some of the NFL Combine props. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Kate, the floor is yours. Talk about Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett, the interesting thing about this Pitt quarterback prospect is that we all knew that the hand size were going to that was going to be a big concern coming into the NFL Combine. For those of you who weren't following along earlier, Kenny Pickett back in spring of 2021 measured in with hands at 8.25 inches. 8.25 inches. So for some context here, we were just talking about a hand size of 8.75 being small.
Mhm.
No, Kenny Pickett is that's a half inch smaller for Kenny Pickett. He officially measured in at 8.5 inches after months of doing lots of
Yep.
exercises to help lengthen his thumbs. Or I guess not lengthen, but
Stretch him.
get a
Yep.
get a quote unquote proper measurement. We heard all about his double jointed thumb. It
Mhm.
plays with 2 gloves in college.
Mhm.
Now has to move on to the NFL level where the ball is a little bit bigger. We've seen his career fumbles be a problem. I'm not sure. I know, again, taking this back to the exercise of, does this combine official measurement showcase something that we saw on the field that's a problem? And I think it does, despite the fact that Kenny Pickett had an absolute breakout season with the Panthers. I think hand size, we should be a bit concerned.
Yeah, I think you should be a little concerned about it. Does it mean that you take him off your board or don't draft him at all? Probably not. But I want to put some context here for Kenny Pickett. I saw a lot of people saying he'll never be able to play in a cold weather city like Pittsburgh, right? Kind of joking about him playing
Yeah.
at Pitt for all those years. But you know the difference is, Kate, is most of the time Kenny Pickett's not playing in cold weather in Pitt, right? Like most of the time, Pitt's season is done early November. Like I'm looking at last year, they're done playing games in Pittsburgh, on November 11th. They're not playing a lot of games in December and January, where you and I are both Pittsburgh people. That's when the weather really turns, right? Like when you get to
Yeah, that's
December
when
and
it gets
January,
bitter.
that's when it gets bitter. That's when the rain and the snow comes. He doesn't have a ton of experience playing in cold weather games, despite playing at Pitt. So if he's drafted by the Steelers and you're having to play a divisional game against the Ravens on January 4th, and it's 5 degrees out, that's where I do worry about him a little bit. But I ultimately think he's going to be okay. The athleticism, I don't know if you saw this. He tested as a 93 percentile athlete at the quarterback position, 4.7 40, which is good, right? Like he hits all the thresholds there, but a little nervous about him. A little nervous.
I am a little bit nervous, and I think that's maybe one of these things that you use as a tiebreaker. Like you said, you don't move him off your draft boards, but uh, I do think it's a fair thing to use as a tiebreaker for some of these. Maybe deciding on which
Sure.
team he'd be a better fit for, like maybe the New Orleans Saints, who play
Yes.
in a dome, and
Or
I think we
Carolina
have.
that plays outside, or they play mostly in domes or in nice weather, right?
Yeah, I think that would be, maybe one of the ways that we can utilize this information. But from a fantasy perspective, do the hands really shake anything? Haha. No, not really, because he's still Kenny Pickett. Hand size is definitely something that I think is going to impact,
Yeah.
more of his actual draft stock, actual NFL performance, and perhaps career longevity if that's an issue.
Yep.
But Kenny Pickett's still going to be Kenny Pickett on the football field with the same hands he's had the whole time.
The only other quarterback that I really wanted to mention, because Malik Willis didn't do anything in testing. Yeah, he threw a couple of really long passes in the drills, but Desmond Ridder, he put on a show. He tested as a 98 percentile athlete. I believe he ran, the official time was a 4.45, I believe. The vertical jump was
4.52.
the 4.52, even better. The
Even better.
vertical jump was the third best vertical jump ever from a quarterback. I thought he had a really good day. And if you're just making a list of like all the boxes he checks, Kate, he was a 4-year starter at Cincinnati who led them to the playoffs. He's got the size. He's got big hands. He's one of the most athletic quarterbacks we've seen over the last 30 years. It's hard not to get a little bit excited about Desmond Ridder and maybe think of him as a value.
Yeah, and I think, people look at his career trajectory. Maybe he's not, one of these top end prospects that we've been awaiting since he came out of high school. He was definitely a work in progress at Cincinnati. But I do think that this combine performance, if nothing else, it showed you that all of these things that we saw on the field in terms of his athleticism, his ability to get some of that breakaway speed when he's in an open field, even as a quarterback. Like you see that, and that it translates well to the testing numbers. Again, it's confirmation that
Sure.
what we've seen on the field, is real, and that's always a good thing.
He's currently QB5 in rookie drafts right now, and I think that's a little low.
I think that's a huge, huge value.
Yeah.
Which quarterbacks are going ahead of him right now?
Malik Willis is currently QB1, Matt Corral QB2, Kenny Pickett QB3, Sam Howell QB4, and Desmond Ridder, the pretty clear-cut QB5 right now in Dynasty League football.
I'm kind of surprised at that. I would definitely take him over Pickett. I would take him over uh, I think Howell. I think he's probably closer to QB3 on athleticism alone. He
Yeah.
fits
Just
the
because he's going to
bill.
get you some rushing yards too, right?
Yes, he fits the bill for a potential, maybe Konami code QB
Yes.
light.
Yes. He had at least 350 rushing yards in 4 straight seasons at Cincinnati as a freshman. 583, 650 in as a sophomore, 592 as a junior, 355, 28 career rushing touchdowns. It's fantastic, right? Like I
That's
don't think people think
amazing.
of him as a runner, maybe as much as they do Malik Willis or Sam Howell. But could he be a guy that gets you 20 rushing yards a game in the NFL and 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns? I don't see why not, right?
I also think that, when you maybe subtract a little bit from that rushing that you're excited about from Malik Willis, you're still getting a good chunk of that upside there as a rusher. And Desmond Ridder, he is, I would trust him more as a passer at this point in his career. But, Malik Willis, obviously, he has the arm strength. He's got all of those physical tools. I think he needs to refine those a bit. But I think Desmond Ritter's actually a little bit more refined as a passer and
I agree.
could give you a safer floor in terms of a passer, but similar, though slightly less upside as a rusher.
I 100% agree. I think he's one of my favorite values, and I've had him as QB3 for a while now, and
I didn't realize that he was one of my favorite values, but
yeah, I mean,
I'm all in, baby.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. I don't know if the combine necessarily moved him up for me, but it just made me more happy and satisfied for where I had him ranked. And I think that's kind of how you have to use the combine, right?
For sure.
So we probably should mention tight ends. I saw, I think that every single tight end tested above the 50th percentile, but the only one that really stood out was Jelani Woods from Virginia, who came in at 6'7", 260 pounds, ran fast, jumped really high. I don't know if he's on our fantasy radars at all because he's probably still going to be a day 3 pick, but that was really the only guy to do anything. So do you have any thoughts on tight ends, or are we good to move on?
I think we're good to move on. This isn't the class that you're going to find your magical Kyle Pitts, your magical unicorn.
And even some of the guys that tested, Trey McBride didn't run the 40-yard dash. Isaiah Likely's testing numbers were only okay. Not a great tight end class. Let's talk about some actual NFL news, Kate. But before we do that, we should tell you guys about Built Bar. By this time of year, everybody has given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not us, because we have Built Bar to help us out. Built Bars are the absolute best protein bar on the market right now. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your favorite candy bar that usually has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut almond, coconut, some of my favorite flavors out right now. And the new flavor this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious, and they are coming out with new flavors all the time. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, Kate, there was some Cowboys news that happened over the last couple of days that we should talk about, because I think it's going to be very impactful for your dynasty rosters. The first being that Blake Jarwin, the Cowboys tight end, had I think it was called rare hip surgery, and the Cowboys do not anticipate him being ready for most, if not all, of the 2022 season. That is noteworthy because Dalton Schultz, their starting tight end, is scheduled to become a free agent. And there's been some rumors that the Cowboys could move on from Amari Cooper. They also have Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson scheduled to be free agents. So what is going on in Dallas?
A revolving door, apparently. I'm kind of shocked because all of this news came out at exactly the same time. The knowledge that they'd be willing to move on from Amari Cooper amidst all of this upheaval across the rest of their roster. Michael Gallup coming off a torn ACL. He'd like to remain with the team. Dalton Schultz, he's going to be a free agent. You mentioned, even if it comes down to them placing the franchise on tag on Dalton Schultz, it's not necessarily a cheap tag, even at the tight end position. He'd be owed somewhere around like $9 to $10 million on the franchise tag this year, projected by over the cap. I think it's $10.8 million for your franchise tag tight end this year. I'm kind of curious because all of these moves are very puzzling to me. Amari Cooper, even if you move on from him, he still carries $6 million in dead cap.
Yep.
I'm uncertain why it makes sense to move on at this point when there are so many moving pieces right now.
First of all, it doesn't make sense to cut Amari. It doesn't at all, because you look at Dak Prescott, before Amari Cooper got there in 2018, he was struggling immensely. Last 16 games before before Amari got traded to Dallas, his passer rating was like 82, and the Cowboys were bad. They trade for Amari. Dak takes off and puts up incredible numbers. I believe his career passer rating is like 113 when Amari Cooper's on the field. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Amari Cooper's only 28 years old. He dealt with some injuries last year, but the guy is good. And maybe he's not the most productive receiver in terms of like 1,500 yard seasons all the time, but he doesn't get a ton of targets, and he still puts up 1,100 yard seasons basically every year. But I think here's the plan for the Cowboys. They are up against the cap. They're currently $13 million over the cap. I think the plan is, Kate, to cut Amari Cooper. They would save $16 million. They could then franchise tag Dalton Schultz. That would cost $10 million, as you mentioned. Use the $6 million. That's basically the gap, right? Because we spent $10 million on Schultz. Use that $6 million and give Michael Gallup like a 1-year deal for $6 million. And then at least we can come back with Gallup, CD, and Dalton Schultz. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what you had last year? Absolutely not. But at least it's a solid receiving core.
Do you think that I'd be curious, do you have any updates on Michael Gallup in terms of his rehab from the ACL, first of all?
Just had surgery 2 weeks ago.
That's a concern. That is a concern, especially when you're talking about a team that, with the addition of Micah Parsons, with Diggs in the mix, like this is a team that is ready to contend. This is not the time to throw out. Okay. Anyway. Okay. We know it doesn't make sense, but
it doesn't make sense.
I'm actually more curious on the Michael Gallup thing, because you mentioned take that $6 million, give, Michael Gallup a 1-year deal. I actually think that Michael Gallup would be commanding more than that as a free agent. Do you not?
Healthy or not healthy?
I mean, so if we're talking 1-year deal, obviously you get a discount. But if you're talking about a team making the investment in Michael Gallup as a wide receiver option for their team, I would say I would rather see him get upwards of 10 to 12 million per year.
Well, and I don't think the Cowboys are opposed to that either, right? Because what they could do hypothetically is they could give him a 3-year, $33 million deal. Okay. Lower the cap hit this year and have the number higher next year so you can fit some more guys under the cap. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that either. I just don't know if Michael Gallup's interested in that. If you're Gallup, do you take that deal now, or do you take a 1-year, $6 million deal guaranteed and then hit free agency again next year once you show everybody that you're healthy? I don't know. That's a tough decision. Can I give you
my issue about the 1-year deal, though, comes down to the fact that he's not probably going to start the season fully healthy. So you're really nudging down and putting yourself against the wall. You're putting your own back against the wall there if you're Michael Gallup, in terms of putting your value as high as it possibly can be. Because what if you don't, you're not ready for the start of the season? What if you're not fully healthy? What if you don't look like Michael Gallup? I think your leverage as a free agent is probably higher now than it will be at the start of the season.
It is possible. However, he did miss a lot of time this year with the calf injury. So he didn't have great numbers last year either. Just 7 touchdowns over the last 2 years. It's fascinating because I think we all know he's really talented and he probably deserves a bigger role. Is that in Dallas? Is that somewhere else? We'll see. One last thing I want to mention, Kate. The Cowboys' plan is if this kind of plays out the way that we laid it out, where they bring back Dalton Schultz, they bring back Gallup to play on the outside, they move CD to the outside receiver, the plan would be to make Tony Pollard the full-time slot receiver. And that's interesting because that's actually the position he played at Memphis. The Cowboys had to move him to running back once he got to the NFL. Like, that was a new position. And they would still obviously give him touches out of the backfield because they should. He's a really good running back. Does that get you excited about potential of Pollard playing more slot snaps?
Absolutely. I've talked about Tony Pollard on and off in this podcast. He's one of these guys that, especially in a dynasty team where you've got those deeper rosters, he's one of these guys that ended up being in my, running back or my second or third flex spot, and I just left him there for the entirety of the season because he has upside as a receiver. He's got absolute explosion. I think this would make him probably unaffordable in Dynasty, and that's just my thought here.
So this might be a good time to buy Tony Pollard because I think once you start to hear those rumblings and rumors come out that he's going to play in the slot, we're going to try to get him 10 to 12 touches a game. And the word, I'm going to hate this comp, but you're going to hear people say he's the next Deebo Samuel. In terms of size, he is. He's very similar. But I think this is a good time to buy Tony Pollard. That's all I'll say right now. Is that fair?
Okay. I'm going to go send out some offers as soon as we sign off.
I should ask you about this, about Dalton Schultz. Is it in his best case for a dynasty asset to remain in Dallas, or would you rather see him go elsewhere? Because I kind of think Dallas is where we've already seen him be a top 7 tight end over the last 2 years. Why not stay?
I'd prefer to see him remain in Dallas, especially if there are going to be movements, in terms of Amari Cooper. If Michael Gallup is not fully healthy, I think Dalton Schultz might be the key asset to keep Dak afloat over the next year. He could be a huge part of this. I think, if that is the way that you're projecting this team, I'm going to also say that Dalton Schultz is a buy.
I don't necessarily disagree either. All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday, Kate, to talk about some running backs at the Combine and some of our biggest takeaways at the Combine. Should be a lot of fun. I'm really curious to see how fast does Breece Hall run? How fast does Kenneth Walker run? We'll break it all down back here on Monday. You can follow the show at Locked On Dynasty on Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. We're really start promoting our YouTube page and putting a lot of videos up there. You can check us out there, Locked On Dynasty. Follow Kate at FF Ball Blast. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. And we'll see you guys next time. Enjoy the Combine, everybody.